Hello and welcome to the demo video for the dynamic cash flow forecast. This is a spreadsheet which I've done quite a few cash flows, but the reason why I've kind of held off doing one like this is because everybody kind of wants a different cash flow. Some people talk about a cash flow, but actually what they want is something to monitor their transactions as well as forecasting, so they can see how they've spent differently to what they plan to spend. Now, this isn't a spreadsheet like that. There are other ones that monitor kind of over a 12-month period as to what you should have done, what you did, etc. This one I've called the dynamic cash flow forecast because this one actually, it literally looks in the future only, and it literally looks from the last date that you updated your bank balance. So the idea here is, for example, to set out reoccurring payments and income, and to set out one-off payments and income, and actually then to be able to see up to 2 years into the future as to what your cash flow will look like. But as soon as you update your bank balance, so you go in and go, well, now my bank balance is that, it takes from that time and goes, I'm only looking in the future. So this way, anything that's been done effectively becomes null and void, and the spreadsheet will tell you when you can take it off and you can actually remove that data because it's not using it anymore. So it's only using data from now into the future. And as I said, it updates every time you update your bank balance, hence the name, the dynamic cash flow. So let me show you how it works. This is the intro and setup tab. There are payment categories. Now, when I say payment, I mean incoming payments or outgoing payments. I've kind of kept it all the same. It really just depends which column you put it into. So you can name categories. You can name these, I don't know, supplies. You can name them as rent and utilities, whatever the categories are. And each category you could have a category name. You could categorize in such a way that you can have income and expense under the same category if you want to. That's fine. Or it could be just something that's income or just something that's expense. But you can list up to 12 categories. Just don't list any duplicates. And then the only other thing you need to fill on here are the alert days. So one-off payments will tell you X number of days in advance that's coming up, and it'll just change color. So you can put in how many days. Just note that those are all days, not just working days. So in this case, 3 days before the due date, it'll flag up as an alert. So that's your intro and setup tab. Once you've set that one up, you've got the two red tabs, reoccurring payments and individual payments. Reoccurring payments, straightforward. Put in a description and then select which category it's in if you wish to categorize it, and then put in a start date. Now, these ones are a little bit tricky, the start date, the occurrence, and the day. Try and line it. The spreadsheet has been made to try and overrule this, but it's obviously making some assumptions. So try and to line these up. So, for example, if you have a consistent income that's coming in every month on the 5th, then you can select monthly. You can select, you've got options here to select weekly, monthly, every 2 months, every quarterly, every 6 months, annually, every 2 years, 3 years, or 5 years. So you can select how often that's happened, and then which day is it. Now, the day I've put the two together, so the day I've put either the number or the actual day, depending on whether it's weeks or months. So just make sure, if I think I did do it, yeah, it'll flag up if you pick the wrong one for the wrong selection. But try and get that start date to line up with the day. Otherwise, it will take the day. If I put in, for example, the first, it will still take it as the first payment on the 5th, so it will correct it. But just for the sake of not confusing things, try and line them up if you can. So the start date will be the first day that actually goes off. So you can set payments to start in the future if you want to. But if they've already started, if it was started 10 years ago, you don't have to put a date 10 years ago, just put a date a month or two ago, and it'll use it, because obviously anything in the past has already been done. So this will give you your first or your current, depending on what selections you made here, date. That's just to show you kind of, okay, that started, yes, it was a Sunday, yes, it was the 5th of March, and it's going to go off monthly. Every month on the 5th, it's going to show that there's an income of £1,000. In these cases, it's outgoing. So for example, here, salaries, you can select the category, start date. This is, oh, that's not even only this, we've made monthly. There we go. That's wrong. So if you select that for monthly, then it says every month on the 25th, it's going to be paid Let's just up this one a little bit to compensate for that, because I want the graphs to go too crazy. But that is then setting up your reoccurring payments. The other thing is it's got an end date. So the end date is if you actually want to end that payment. So if it's going to end in the future, you can put a future date so that it knows when to stop. You might have some kind of loan repayment or something that only goes on for a year, or whatever the case might be. You can actually put the term in, start and end date right at the beginning, and it will follow up until that end date. The other thing is, once you've put the end date in, don't necessarily remove this until it tells you to remove it. So what it's going to do is going to check that end date, and once you've got a bank balance after that and it knows there are no more due to come off, then it'll say remove, and that row will go gray and it will remove. Let's just see in actual fact, if we put in 1st of March 2023, for example, yeah, you see it goes gray, it tells you that's been done. You've got a bank balance since then, nothing else is due to happen. And when you see that, you can then actually select that, right click, clear contents. Once you've cleared that row, you can then sort by description or start date or end date or day or outgoing or whatever it is you want to sort it. I would imagine probably start date to get them in order, or else if you put them in alphabetical order. So that, only remove it when you see that gray row. Once you set that up, those are your reoccurring transactions. If you see any yellow cells, fill them in. If you see any red cells, you've made a mistake, just correct it. And once you're happy with all of those, you can then move on to the individual payments. Now, if you get a new one, you can come and add on. If one gets removed, as I said, put in an end date and then clear it out once it goes gray, and you can add some more on here and keep this list updated as you go along. That one's a relatively easy one to do. The individual payments, obviously, there's more kind of paperwork to do in this, because each row you put in is just for one payment. So we can put whatever it is we were going to be purchasing, or whatever income's coming in. Again, you can categorize it. I've just given every row a different category, but you obviously be duplicating categories down that column. That's fine. And then the due date. So you put in the due date when it's due to either be paid or or be paid out or paid in. And then that will change color. So this is now said that this won't change color here, but it'll show here. So this now says it's an alert, because that one is actually coming up today as I'm shooting the video. It's the 8th of March, and this one says the 9th of March, so it's tomorrow. So that one flags up as alert. If that was yesterday, for example, then it changes to overdue. So it'll change. If it changes to overdue, what's actually best for the spreadsheet is actually to come in here and change the due date so that it is sometime either today or in the future. It will still include it into the cash flow until it's actually been paid. So if it hasn't been paid, even if it's overdue, it'll still assume that it's going to be paid today, and it'll keep assuming it's paid today until you pay it. But for your sake, it's probably better just to change the due date if it has been delayed, the payment. And then again, the value if it's outgoing, value if it's incoming. That was the same as that, outgoing, incoming. You can actually put an outgoing and an incoming value. It won't mess it up. It'll just take the difference between the two. So you can, in theory, go, well, this is so much money coming out, going out and coming in. But chances are you'll probably put them on two different rows. And then lastly, the paid date. Now, this paid date is slightly different, because this paid date, if you actually click on that thing, on this little arrow, it gives you the day and the time. The reason why it does that is because the spreadsheet doesn't necessarily know. If you update the bank balance today and then you come in and put things that have been paid today, it doesn't know whether or not it was paid before or after you've updated the bank balance. So the reoccurring payments, these ones assume that it comes off very early in the morning on that day, which then assumes that if you update the bank balance today, any reoccurring payments today would have already gone off. It assumes that, because I didn't want to have you to have to come and select which ones have come off each time. It would be an absolute pain. So this one just assumes that if you update the bank balance on a certain day, the payments come off. This one doesn't. So when you actually select that as the date paid, you'll see it doesn't tell you to remove it yet, because the bank balance hasn't been paid since this time. If I go afterwards and go into the forecast, which is here, and update the bank balance, then obviously this will then say, well, that was paid before the bank balance. So it will then show as gray. Now, this might not be an exact thing because you might not know exactly when it was paid. But if you see that it's paid and you select the time, and then you go across to the forecast a minute or two later and update the bank balance, just make sure you update the bank balance kind of last on the sheet, because then what it'll do is the time given here will be later than all of these paid times, and all of these will then say, okay, those ones can all be removed. So that's why there's a date and a time rather than just a date. So you just have to click that box and select it. It'll give you the current date and time. So those are your individual payments. And then the spreadsheet takes your recurring payments and individual payments and sets up a forecast. So there's the cash flow forecast. So what you do is once you've updated these two payments, you look to your bank account, you've updated those two payments, and you've ticked off, selected the date and time of any that have been paid, then come to the forecast, update the bank balance, and then select this last. Because if you select this last, then anything else you've done on the spreadsheet before that with regards to individual payments will then be marked off as being accounted for. And this is now your current bank balance. And then once you've done that, this one as well, you just select it, it'll give you the date. I don't want to do it now because mine's just slightly different, but you can say if you did it yesterday and you had yesterday's date and you come in today, in fact, let me update it. You can actually come here and select that, and then it updates it. This one doesn't change because I haven't done anything since then, but yours may well change because it's now got a new bank balance. And if I'd left that date and time in there, it would now go gray for me to remove, and I can clear contents, resort. So this is the forecast, opening and closing. So it shows you opening balance in blue and closing balance. You can see how the balance is dropping, where it goes up, where it goes down. You can obviously see your bank balance into the next 2 years. You can see 24 months. Again, you can see here all the months down the left with the opening and closing. This gives you the total activity. So activity, what that means is money in or money out. But what it does is it doesn't tell you what those all are. It just says there's a difference in 1,800. So for example, if you had £2,000 going out and £200 coming in, it would give you a total activity balance of 1,800. In the reoccurring, there's a difference of 1,200. And in the individual, there's a difference of -600. Now that -600, as it turns out, might actually be a few things. So that -600 is actually 1,000 outgoing plus 600 outgoing, because those are all March. So that's 1,600 minus 1,000. So it doesn't give you an itemized thing. What this one does is it just tells you what the difference is. So the overall effect on the individual payments is -600 £. The overall effect on reoccurring, and the overall effect on total activity. So that's per month what's going on. This bank balance percentage, this actually shows you what effect this has had on your bank balance. So for example, if you had £100 in the bank at the beginning of the month, and at the end of the month, you actually had £110, that would show you a 10% increase in your bank account. So this is just showing you what percentage of your bank account that month is actually affecting. And then you can actually, these values here, the reoccurring and individual, you can see these on a graph. So you can see where you've had a kind of months where it's had a positive effect in your bank account, and months where it's had a negative effect. That's just the reoccurring activity. That's the individual. And then you can see the overall here as to what's gone on month by month. Now, these three graphs are duplicated at the bottom, but at the bottom, these three are for a particular category. So you can come here and you can select a category, for example. So if we just say category 1, you'll see those ones are all the same. If we have a look back here, we'll see category 1 I assigned to rent. So hang on, forecast, there we go. So that would just be rent. So you wouldn't have anything in the individual, and the overall would be the same. But this is just to let you categorize, select one category rather than everything. If you leave it blank, it removes everything. But it's the same as these three graphs here. So that's your cash flow, and obviously the effect it has on your bank account and the changes per month, etc. The last tab is a weekly view. So this one will show you a week at a time. It lists all the descriptions. In fact, it lists up to, how many have we got there? 35. 35, I think. And it will show you how many pages there are up here. So at the moment there is only one page. If you've got more transactions to show, it'll say one of two, and then you can come here and you can type in 2, and you can see page 2, 3, 4, however many it takes. But this will show you the description, the category, and each day of the week, what's happening. So here, my bank balance is going to change. This is going, the new laptop, going to go and purchase it on Sunday, the 12th of March, and it's going to cost me £1,000. So that one, I can see what's coming up this month. These ones are blank because I've already passed those days. If you've updated it on your bank balance and you've passed the days, then it won't show them. So this will always show the current week, and obviously excluding days that have already been, and it'll show the rest of the days this week. So you can get a weekly view of what's expected to come in, what's expected to go out. But you can also look into the future. So I can look at next week. I can look at the week after. You see there's salaries coming off that day and a training day that we've got. So you can see what's coming up on the different days into the future. And you can go forward 2 years. So it gives you week by week for the next 2 years. So this list will change as you go into the next week. It'll start with the 13th, etc. If you want to leave it in the current week, you can just select blank and it'll update automatically. So whenever you open this spreadsheet, if that's blank, it'll show you the current week, or you can override it. So this page is one that will give you a weekly view or lists of what's expected each week. This is an overall kind of month by month view. Hopefully you understand what those graphs are. And these 3 graphs are duplicated at the bottom for a particular category. And individual payments, reoccurring payments, and your intro and setup. What I would suggest, reoccurring payments, obviously you put in and you leave until you've got an end date. And individual payments, you're going to be fiddling around with more often than not. I would update the due date if it goes overdue, unless, of course, you really want to be alerted by it, then leave it, but otherwise just update it, because if it hasn't been done, it's got to be done in the future. So you'd need to reassign it anyway. Pay date, select that, but do this first before updating your bank balance, so that the spreadsheet knows that these transactions were done before you updated your bank balance. What you could do is you could go in, update your bank balance, then do the individual payments, and then when you finish, just update this date again before looking through the report. If this one's done afterwards, it just makes it more accurate. And yeah, the individual payments, reoccurring, and then these categories. You can add categories on or remove. If you remove these categories midway through, then all you'll need to do is on your reoccurring payments and individual payments, the one that you've removed will flag up red and you'll just have to reselect it. So yeah, hopefully that explains everything. It's a fairly simple spreadsheet to use. There's not an awful lot to do with it, but it needs to be done properly. So hence the somewhat lengthy demo video I needed to explain everything. So yeah, when you're actually using it, go through that video again, have a look, make sure it's all done correctly. And yeah, if you use a spreadsheet and you need a cash flow, I really hope that it helps your business and helps you to get an insight of what's coming up so that you can be best prepared. Thank you very much and goodbye.